Welcome back to another explosive episode of the Mormon News Roundup. Today we're diving into one of the most dark and disturbing chapters that we've ever covered, the top 10 Mormon psychopaths of all time. From religious extremism to shocking betrayals of trust, we're taking a look at individuals whose actions defy belief and who have left a permanent stain on history. You've likely heard of some of these names before, but today we're going beyond the headlines and beyond the trials and digging into the twisted motivations that push these individuals to commit unimaginable acts. Whether it's a calculated murder, religious zealotry, or brutal child abuse, these disturbing figures share one thing in common: zero regard for human life. From a cult leader whose brutal murders were justified using the blood atonement doctrine, to a con man whose forgeries ended up taking a dark turn, we'll discover how religion and psychopathy sometimes go hand in hand. We'll examine figures like Ted Bundy, whose charm hid a deadly character beneath, and John D. Lee, who orchestrated one of the most horrific massacres in US history. But it's not going to stop there. We'll also uncover the horrifying cases of individuals like Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, whose doomsday beliefs led them to kill innocent children, and the disturbing case of Brian David Mitchell, whose religious delusions led to kidnappings and years of torment. So brace yourself for a chilling countdown of those whose twisted actions left a trail of destruction, and get ready to understand the shocking psychology behind these Mormon figures. This is one episode you don't want to miss, so let's jump into it. Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt is a chilling tale of child abuse that shocked the nation. The two women, who had once been trusted members of the Mormon community, gained attention for their controversial parenting advice on YouTube, where Franke shared her ultra-strict approach to raising children. But behind the polished exterior of happy family content, a darker reality unfolded. Franke was a mother of 6 and Hildebrandt was a therapist. They ran the YouTube channel called 8 Passengers, where they portrayed themselves as loving, disciplined parents offering tips on raising children. However, their reality was far from the image that they projected. In 2023, authorities began investigating the pair after one of Franke's children escaped from their home and alerted the police about the severe abuse he had been enduring. What followed was a series of horrific discoveries. The children had been subjected to extreme punishment, neglect, and emotional torment. One child was found malnourished and severely dehydrated, and locked in a small, filthy room. The other children showed signs of physical abuse and psychological trauma. Franke and Hildebrandt's disciplinary methods, which they justified through their twisted interpretations of religious principles, left the children scarred. In the aftermath of their arrests, both women faced serious charges. Franke was charged with child abuse, while Hildebrandt faced similar accusations, including aiding and abetting the abuse. Their trial revealed just how deeply they had manipulated their children and how their public personas were built on a foundation of lies. In 2024, Franke and Hildebrandt were convicted and sentenced to long prison terms for their crimes. The story of Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the responsibility we have to protect the most vulnerable in our society: our children. These two psychopaths are the subject of a recent Netflix documentary, The Devil in the Family.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door. He's got duct taped around each ankle. He's obviously covered in wounds.
Ms. Franke, how do you plead to count 1, child abuse?
Guilty.
To count 3, child abuse?
With my deepest regret and sorrow for my family and my children. Guilty.
What Ruby has done, it just crossed a line of abusive to just psychotic.
My wife, Ruby's sole ambition was to be seen as the perfect mom. And so she decided to create a YouTube channel, and we became 8 Passengers.
Thumbs up, subscribe.
Our entire schedule revolved around YouTube. It felt more like a set than a house.
She just wanted to show the view of a Mormon happy family. But they only saw what we wanted to show them.
Sit her down on the flipping couch. Okay, move it. If I hear one more word, get out.
The devil knocked, and we opened the door.
Welcome to Connections. I'm Jodi Hildebrandt.
Jodi was a therapist, and she would prey on the weak. She was excellent at exploiting Mormon anxiety.
Jodi began to live at our home. It was uncomfortably intimate. Weird things started happening. Ruby said the children were demonically possessed. That was the spark that blew the powder keg.
911 emergency.
Hi, my name is Franke, and my neighbors have been telling me that my 4 younger siblings have been left home alone for about 4 or 5 days.
Open the door!
It was unlike anything I've ever seen.
It's like a ghost story.
I'm still recording!
I'm worried about the kids.
Why didn't you stand up to say, this is nonsense? If I dwell on that question, it eats me alive.
Fake being happy. Okay? I don't know if I can right now.
Brian David Mitchell is a name that will forever be associated with one of the most disturbing and shocking kidnappings in U.S. history. In 2002, Mitchell, who was a man who had serious mental instability and religious delusions, abducted 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart from her home in a suburb of Salt Lake City. Mitchell, who saw himself as a self-proclaimed prophet, believed that he was carrying out God's will when he abducted Elizabeth. He then forced her into a life of captivity which lasted for 9 months. Together with his wife, Wanda Barzee, Mitchell took Elizabeth to a remote location where she was subjected to physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. He told Elizabeth that she had been chosen by God and that she was to become his spiritual wife. He imposed a strict and twisted set of rules on her, controlling every aspect of her life and threatened violence if she disobeyed. Despite a nationwide search for Elizabeth, she remained hidden, her abductors continuing to move her around in an effort to evade the authorities. It wasn't until March 2003, when Elizabeth was spotted by a bystander in a public area with Mitchell and Barzee, that she was finally rescued. Her remarkable courage and strength in surviving such horror led to her eventual freedom. Mitchell's delusionary belief system played a central role in the tragedy. He convinced himself that his actions were divinely ordained, and his sick manipulation and control of Elizabeth were rooted in a false sense of righteousness. In 2010, after years of legal battles, Mitchell was convicted of kidnapping and SA, and he was sentenced to a life in prison without the possibility of parole. While Mitchell spends his life behind bars, Elizabeth Smart has gone on to become an advocate for survivors of kidnapping and abuse, using her platform to speak out on behalf of others who have suffered as she did.
9 years after her kidnapping ordeal, Elizabeth Smart saw her tormentor sentenced to life in prison yesterday, but not before she delivered her final message to him in court. CBS News correspondent John Blackstone reports on that.
With cameras and cell phones banned from the courthouse, the first news came in handwritten notes.
Wait, here we go. There it is, right there. Life in prison. Now,
the life sentence for Brian David Mitchell is exactly what Elizabeth Smart and her family had been waiting for years.
I am so thrilled with the results that came out today. The life sentence, I couldn't be happier.
Today is the ending of a very long chapter and the beginning of a very beautiful chapter for me.
It began in 2002 when Smart was 14 years old, kidnapped from her Salt Lake City bedroom at knife point. She was found 9 months later, and Mitchell was arrested. During his trial, Mitchell was regularly removed from court for singing hymns. He did the same thing at his sentencing.
As soon as they brought him in the door, he went, "O come, Emmanuel," and began singing hymns as he always has in the past.
Mitchell kept singing as Smart finally had a chance to address him.
I told Brian David Mitchell today in court that one day he will have to be responsible for his actions.
And she wasn't disappointed. He had no response.
I heard enough during those 9 months, and I never have to hear anything else from him again.
Mitchell's sentencing came on Missing Children's Day.
First, we would like to highlight Bianca Piper.
And Smart took the opportunity to focus attention on some who are still missing.
Keep looking for them because miracles can happen, and they still do happen today.
Pointing to her own life as evidence that anything is possible.
Jodi Arias' name will forever be linked with one of the most brutal and highly publicized murders in American history. In 2008, she murdered her then boyfriend Travis Alexander in a crime that shocked the nation to its core. What made this case even more chilling was the savagery of the attack. Travis was stabbed 27 times, shot in the head, and his throat was slit. The savagery of the crime and the details that emerged during the trial painted a disturbing image of Jodi Arias' obsession with Travis and the escalating violence that she inflicted upon him. At the time of the murder, Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander had a tumultuous on-again, off-again relationship. Even though their romance had ended, Arias remained fixated on Travis, and her behavior began to grow increasingly erratic. Arias' motives for the murder was tied to her intense jealousy and anger over Travis's new relationships, as well as her own possessiveness. Her actions that day were marked by premeditation and cruelty, leading to a violent confrontation at Travis's home in Mesa, Arizona. Arias initially tried to cover up the crime by concocting a series of lies about what had happened. She claimed she was not involved in Travis's death and even suggested that it was a home invasion by two unknown assailants. However, the investigation revealed the true story through a series of incriminating photographs and evidence that contradicted her claims. A key piece of evidence was a series of photographs found on Travis's camera, showing him alive and happy just hours before his death. Evidence that placed Arias at the scene and exposed the cold-hearted nature of her murder. The trial that followed was a media sensation. Arias' defense team argued that she acted in self-defense after years of abuse. But the prosecution countered that the evidence showed the murder was premeditated and extremely violent. After months of testimony, Jodi Arias was convicted of first-degree murder in 2013. Arias was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her case became a symbol of obsession and manipulation, as well as a reminder of how toxic relationships can escalate into tragedy. While Jodi Arias' name is now synonymous with her brutal crime, Travis Alexander's legacy remains a tragic testament to the dangers of possessive love and the darkness that can lie behind closed doors.
There's been a lot of things said about Jodi.
She's crazy. She told an obvious lie.
She deserves the death penalty.
She was afraid for her life. For the first time, this will be a more balanced report, not something that's sensationalized. We had access to Jodi's journal. It is heartbreaking.
Dear Diary, this is horrendous. The most awful thing I've ever had to deal with.
Travis really did have a double life. They're all portraying him as a perfect Mormon man. Emotional and verbal abuse. That is ongoing almost the entire relationship. How do we know? We have thousands of texts where he is berating her.
I'm aiming for your heart.
Misogyny played a big role in this case. The prosecution painted her as a seductress. People are quick to judge a woman who's sexually active, and a man is always given a pass.
I'm now holding 15 pages of text messages between Travis and other women.
Had Jodi been the one to end up dead, I would have had a really hard time defending Travis.
I'm so addicted.
He picked me up and body slammed me on the tile. He was chasing me. I grabbed the gun, pointed it at him. I thought that would stop him.
Dear Diary, every day I hate myself more and more. I walk around like it's all okay, but I'm a shadow of what I once was.
Mark Hofmann is a story of greed, deception, and murder, all disguised under the veil of religious history. In the 1980s, Hofmann was one of the most trusted rare document dealers in inner Mormon circles, but he had a knack for forging historical documents, many of which were believed by others to be critical pieces of Mormon history. His most famous documents were forgeries that were supposedly written by Joseph Smith, the founder of the LDS Church. Hoffmann's rise to prominence in the world of Mormon antiquities was marked by his ability to produce highly convincing documents. His forgeries fooled many in the LDS community, including high-ranking church leaders, and he quickly gained a reputation as a valuable asset in historical research. But his success was built on a foundation of lies, and the tension of maintaining this deception began to grow. In the mid-1980s, Hofmann's sick world began to unravel. Desperate to cover up the financial and personal consequences of his fraudulent activities, he resorted to violence. In 1985, Hofmann planted bombs that killed 2 people: Stephen Christensen, a Mormon businessman and collector of rare documents, and Kathy Sheets, the wife of a former associate of Hofmann's. The bombings were intended to silence those who were close to discovering the truth about his forgeries. These murders ultimately led to Hofmann's arrest, and he was charged with 2 counts of murder and multiple counts of fraud. In 1987, Hofmann pleaded guilty to the murders and was sentenced to life in prison. His case became infamous, not just for the deaths he caused, but for the massive betrayal of trust within the LDS community, where his forgeries had cast doubt on the authenticity of sacred texts. Mark Hofmann's story is a stark reminder of the lengths to which some will go to protect their lives and the devastating consequences of deception. While his forgeries caused irreparable harm to the reputations of those involved, his crimes also exposed the vulnerability of religious institutions to manipulation and fraud. Today, Hofmann remains behind bars, but his twisted story continues to haunt both the Mormon community and the world of rare document collection.
This 1830 letter disgraced the Mormon Church, saved the Library of Congress $1.5 billion, and ended up with 3 bombings and 2 murder convictions. And it's not even real. This is Mark Hofmann, who in the early 1980s was a rare book and manuscript dealer who specialized in Mormon Church history. In 1980, he sold this document to the church for the equivalent of $20,000. He purported it to be a transcription of the original golden plates that Joseph Smith found in the hand of his scribe, Martin Harris. A Mormon scholar at the time heralded it as good of a test as we're ever going to get of the authenticity of the Book of Mormon. It was also a fake. This sale launched his career, and over the next couple of years, he developed a wide client list, selling both fake and genuine items, both to the church as well as to various private collectors. Notably, in 1981, he sold the church an 1865 letter that called into question the legitimacy of Brigham Young's leadership of the church, claiming that Joseph Smith had actually appointed his son, Joseph Smith III, as his successor before his death. This revelation resulted in national press and shocked Mormon academia, who had long debated the legitimacy of Brigham Young's claim. In 1984, he sold the church this 1830 letter, the now famous Salamander letter. This letter was again written by Martin Harris and documented how when Joseph Smith went to dig up the golden plates that are the foundation of the Mormon religion, he was actually visited by a white salamander that turned into a spirit, and it was demanding that he produce his dead brother in order to be able to receive the golden books. This seemed to suggest that the church was rooted in folk magic, and it was explosive in Mormon academia. Like any good con man, all this time Hofmann was robbing Peter to pay Paul, not giving customers documents that he had promised them, and accepting payments for documents he did not have. He had planned to resolve this with the sale of this document right here to the Library of Congress for $1.5 million. This is the Oath of Freemen, which is known to be the very first document that was ever printed in the American colonies in the year of 1639, and there were no known copies to exist. When this deal got delayed, Hofmann panicked and bombed one of his largest customers, Stephen Christensen, who unfortunately died in that explosion. He then delivered another device to Christensen's boss's house, which ended up killing his boss's wife, Kathy Sheets. The second explosion was designed to throw investigators away from Hofmann and suggest that maybe the bombing had to do with a business dealing. But the fact that a third explosion was set off in Hofmann's car, in which he was personally injured, meant that the jig was up. Hofmann survived the explosion, but upon searching his house, policemen found his office that was covered in all of his forgery tools, including the engraved plate of the Oath of the Freemen that he was trying to sell to the Library of Congress. He was found to have forged hundreds of different documents attributed to all kinds of famous people, including George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Mark Twain, and Emily Dickinson, just to name a few. Hofmann pled guilty to murder, theft by deception, and fraud, and in his parole documents over the next couple of years, he revealed that his motive was not only, obviously, for money, but also to embarrass the church that he had become disenchanted with over the course of his lifetime. He is currently serving a life sentence for his crimes in the state of Utah, and we still don't know how many of his documents are out there.
Ron and Dan Lafferty are at the center of one of the most chilling and brutal murders in Mormon history. In 1984, these two brothers, fueled by their extreme fundamentalist beliefs, brutally murdered their sister-in-law, Brenda Lafferty, and her 15-month-old daughter, Erica. Their crimes were fueled by a twisted interpretation of Mormon doctrine, specifically the Lafferty brothers' belief in the doctrine of blood atonement, a doctrine that suggests that certain sins can only be forgiven through one's death. The Lafferty brothers had become increasingly radicalized by their interpretation of Mormon teachings. They had been excommunicated from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints due to their extreme views, but they continued to follow a strict fundamentalist version of the faith. Ron in particular believed that he had received a revelation from God commanding him to kill Brenda. who had been outspoken against their beliefs, and her younger daughter Erica as part of a supposed divine mission. On July 24, 1984, Ron and Dan carried out their murders. They went to Brenda's home in American Fork, Utah, where they confronted her. After a violent struggle, they killed her and her daughter with a knife. The brutality of the crime was shocking. Brenda's throat was slashed, and little Erica was also murdered in the attack. The brothers then fled the scene, leaving the bodies behind in what became a horrific case of religiously motivated violence. The Lafferty brothers' crime was eventually uncovered, and both were arrested. Ron was convicted of 2 counts of murder and sentenced to death, while Dan was convicted of 2 counts of murder and sentenced to life in prison. Ron's sentence was later reduced to life imprisonment after a lengthy legal battle, and Dan, despite having played an active role in the murders, was also sentenced to life without parole. The Lafferty case is one of the most disturbing examples of how extreme religious beliefs can manifest in violence and murder. It highlighted the dangerous potential for fanaticism when individuals believe that they have a divine mandate to kill. In the years since, the story of the Lafferty brothers has captivated the public's imagination, particularly through the 2003 book Under the Banner of Heaven by John Krakauer, which explores the brothers' radical views and the motivations behind their horrifying crime.
A new series coming to FX and Hulu is getting a lot of attention in Utah ahead of its release.
Under the Banner of Heaven throws a spotlight on a horrific crime in American Fork back in 1984, when the Lafferty brothers claimed that God told them to murder their sister-in-law Brenda and her baby.
News specialist Matt Rascone has been working on this, and Matt, you spoke to the victim's sister and a historian who's seen some of the series.
Yeah, that's right, and a lot of reaction to this, in part because the series is inspired by a controversial book about the murders and the history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. As for the series, we learned we shouldn't expect a historically accurate portrayal of the awful story that unfolded here years ago in Utah County.
It's a feeling that just brings everything to the forefront.
Since the horrific crime nearly 38 years ago,
I'd always kind of crossed my fingers that it would just go away.
The story of Brenda and Erica Lafferty's murders has resurfaced again
so that we could,
and again,
finally let Brenda and Erica rest.
Sharon Wright Weeks knew Hollywood was interested in her sister's story. She spoke to the writer, Dustin Lance Black, in 2011, but that was it. Then last year, she learned with everyone else.
One of my biggest fears has come to fruition, and that is that my sister will be murdered.
About a new TV series, Under the Banner of Heaven.
Publicly for everybody to see.
John Krakauer's 2003 book under the same name is the inspiration for the series. Ron and Dan Lafferty claimed God had told them to kill their sister-in-law and niece. The book argues the roots of their crime lie deep in the history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Violence and extremism can come from anything that people believe in.
Barbara Brown is the former director of the Mormon History Association. She watched a screening of the first 2 episodes of Under the Banner of Heaven this week.
My concern is I think a lot of people will see this and see it as actual history. It is a fictionalized story in that the main character, played by Andrew Garfield, is not a true character.
Brown says Garfield's character attempts to represent the mainstream Latter-day Saint church member of the day. But Brown, who was a high school senior in Provo in 1984, says even his character was extremist.
I didn't recognize anything about myself, my family, or my culture depicted in the miniseries.
Seems like it's almost all fiction.
Weeks says she spoke to the actual lead detective on the case yesterday. He told her the writer of the series, Lance Black, never reached out to him.
If you don't interview people who were actually there and took charge of the case, I don't know how real it could be.
Weeks is not sure she's ready to watch Hollywood's spin on her sister and niece's murders.
I'll have to wait and see the words that he's put in her mouth.
But she told me,
I'm hoping that this will be it.
And that Brenda and Erica's deaths will finally be put to rest.
Sharon Weeks described her sister as a strong-willed, ambitious woman who is just as kind and loving as anyone could be. She says she will eventually watch the series to fact-check how they portray Brenda. Guys?
Yeah, you can certainly understand why it's going to be a tough watch for that family, though.
Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow's story is one of the most chilling and tragic cases of religious extremism and manipulation. In 2019 and 2020, the couple became the center of a nationwide mystery and an eventual criminal investigation when Lori's two children, 7-year-old Joshua J.J. Vallow and 16-year-old Tylee Ryan, disappeared without a trace. The children's disappearance set off a series of events that would uncover a web of lies, manipulation, and murder. Chad Daybell, a self-proclaimed doomsday author with extreme religious beliefs, had married Lori Vallow, a mother of two, just weeks after the suspicious death of his previous wife, Tammy Daybell. Together, the couple embraced a dangerous and unorthodox religious worldview, believing that the world was about to end and that they were part of a divinely inspired mission to prepare for the apocalypse. Their disturbing beliefs were rooted in a mix of apocalyptic prophecy, spiritual warfare, and the idea that people were either light or dark based on their spiritual status. This belief system led them to make horrifying decisions. Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell were eventually implicated in the deaths of Lori's children, JJ and Tylee. In the months leading up to their deaths, both children were reported missing, and their mother and her new husband refused to cooperate with law enforcement. Eventually, the investigation uncovered that both children had been murdered. JJ was found buried on Chad's property, and Tylee's remains were discovered nearby in a severely disfigured state. The couple's actions, as well as their attempts to hide the truth, shocked the nation. Chad and Lori were arrested in 2010, and their cases garnered widespread media attention due to the bizarre and horrific nature of the crime, as well as the religious zealotry that seemed to drive their actions. Both were charged with multiple counts, including first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and child abandonment. The case also involved the mysterious death of Tammy Daybell, Chad's former wife, who was found dead under suspicious circumstances just weeks before Chad married Lori. The story of Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow is a tragic and horrifying example of how dangerous religious extremism and manipulation can be. It serves as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of those around such individuals, especially children, who are often the most affected by their twisted beliefs. As the case continues to unfold, the legacy of JJ and Tylee remains a heartbreaking testament to the devastating impact of misguided beliefs on innocent lives.
Where are your kids? No comment. No comment? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say?
Chad and Lori Vallow Daybell are set to go on trial. Their case has often led to more questions than answers. A mystery so strange and so violent that investigators are still piecing it together.
I did exactly what I felt the Lord was instructing me to do.
Here's what we know about the Daybell case and how an Arizona hairdresser and an Idaho author ended up at the center of a web of 5 suspicious deaths and allegedly cult-like religious beliefs. It was just before Christmas that police in Rexburg, Idaho pleaded with the public for help. 2 children were missing and hadn't been seen since September. 7-year-old Joshua J.J. Vallow was described as having special needs, including autism. Police said his 16-year-old sister, Tylee Ryan, was devoted to him. The FBI and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children were part of the search. Police said this doorbell camera footage was the last known video of JJ. But police said the children's mother, Lori Vallow, wasn't helping to find them and had never reported them missing at all. JJ and Tylee's extended family hired private investigator Rich Robertson for help.
I mean, that's the most mysterious thing. I mean, all of this attention and all of this speculation, all this anxiety would just simply evaporate if they just said, here are the kids.
But Lori and Chad stayed quiet, issuing a statement via their attorney at the time, calling Chad a, quote, loving husband and Lori a, quote, devoted mother. As the search continued for JJ and Tylee, East Idaho News' Nate Eaton tracked the couple down on the sunny island of Kauai, thousands of miles away from Idaho.
Just tell us where they are. Chad, where are Lori's kids?
Police executing a search warrant on the couple in their car found Tylee's cell phone and items belonging to JJ, but there was no sign of the kids.
Search warrant for you guys.
Chad and Lori were also confronted by Dateline.
Is heading out today?
No comments.
Where are your kids? There's a lot of people who are worried about your kids. Are you guys worried about them?
Authorities in Idaho had given Lori a January 30th deadline to prove the kids were okay, but she didn't show up. Then, on February 20th, Lori was arrested in Kauai and charged with felony desertion of JJ and Tylee and misdemeanor charges of resisting and obstructing an officer, solicitation of a crime, and contempt. Lori made her first court appearance in Kauai before being extradited to Idaho. Her former high school friend, Bernadette Flores Lopez, told Inside Edition Digital at the time she couldn't believe the girl she remembered as a devout Mormon cheerleader was in the news for this. And speculation swirled about how this mom of three got to this place.
I think she's so brainwashed and so far gone. This person that she's married to is writing books about Doomsday and end of the world. And, I know her book, her Mormon religion don't teach that.
Chad wrote about his ability to communicate with people on the other side of the veil and see into the future after having 2 near-death experiences. His ideas also included the existence of past lives and that people could become possessed by demons or zombies.
Ideas that Chad and Lori had about reincarnation weren't just a theological idea. They set Lori and Chad apart as significant figures. They didn't just teach that the second coming was near. They taught that they would be the leaders in a movement leading up to the second coming.
Then, in June, investigators searching Chad Daybell's land discovered JJ and Tylee's remains. They said they had used cell phone data from Lori's brother, Alex Cox, to find the remains, which they believe Alex buried there. Chad was arrested and charged with willfully destroying, concealing, or altering evidence, and conspiracy to commit destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence. He has pleaded not guilty and has denied all allegations of wrongdoing.
Anything you want to say, Chad?
During his preliminary hearing, the court heard this phone call between Chad and Lori on the day the children's remains were found.
Hello?
Are you okay?
The audio is hard to hear at times, but it sounds like Chad tells Lori he feels relieved.
I'm feeling pretty calm. I would call Marco, really.
Lori is also facing felony charges of conspiracy to commit destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence in the case of JJ and Tylee. She has also pleaded not guilty and denied all allegations of wrongdoing. Meanwhile, the investigation into Lori's husband Charles's death and the death of Chad's first wife Tammy continue. The state of Idaho announced Chad and Lori are under investigation for conspiracy, attempted murder, and/or murder in Tammy's death. Julie Rowe, an author who worked with Chad, told Inside Edition Digital something he said just before Tammy's death disturbed her.
3 weeks before Tammy dies, he said to me, and he was kind of in this frustrated voice, "My plan can't move forward until Tammy's dead."
Police in Arizona say Lori remains a person of interest in the shooting death of her 4th husband, who was seen in this body cam footage trying to get police to help Lori.
So how does she pose a threat to your children?
I don't know what she's going to do with them. I don't know if she's going to flee with them, she's going to hurt them.
Charles Vallow had filed a petition for Lori to undergo an emergency mental health evaluation in January 2019, months before he was shot and killed by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. Cox himself died in December, and his death remains under investigation. Charles tells police multiple times he is worried Lori could hurt someone.
I want her to get help. Yeah. She's my wife. I love her to death. Something's going on. Okay. And if she wants me gone, fine. I'll do all that stuff. I just don't want her hurt. Okay. I just don't want to hurt anybody else.
As JJ and Tylee's extended families are left to mourn the children, many say Charles's warnings about Lori went unheeded. All have vowed to continue to fight for justice for JJ and Tylee.
Porter Rockwell, often referred to as the destroying angel of the early Mormon Church, was a notorious figure whose violent actions were tied directly to his loyalty to Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. Known for his fierce devotion to the LDS faith, Rockwell became infamous for carrying out a series of violent acts, including several murders, all in the name of the church in its early formative years in the 1830s. Rockwell was born in 1813 and joined the LDS Church early in its history, becoming one of Joseph Smith's closest allies and bodyguards. His reputation for toughness and fearlessness quickly earned him a prominent role in defending the early Mormon community, especially as tensions between Mormons and non-Mormons in places like Missouri and Illinois escalated. But it was was his involvement in violent acts that cemented his place in infamy. Rockwell is believed to have been involved in numerous murders, most notably the killing of Joseph Smith's political and religious opponents. Perhaps the most well-known violent act attributed to Porter Rockwell was his involvement in the attempt to kill Missouri Governor Lilburn Boggs. In 1842, Rockwell was accused of shooting and wounding the governor, an event that was linked to the Mormon struggle for survival in the state of Missouri. Although he was arrested for the crime, he was acquitted in 1843, and his violent reputation continued to grow. Porter Rockwell's acts of violence were justified by his belief in divine protection and his fierce loyalty to Joseph Smith and then Brigham Young. Over time, he became a legendary figure in the Mormon community, not only for his violent acts, but also for his unflinching dedication to what he believed was God's will. Despite his violent past, Rockwell lived to a relatively old age, dying in 1878. His legacy remains controversial, with some viewing him as a heroic figure who defended the church, while others see him as a ruthless enforcer who used violence to further the ambitions of church leaders. Porter Rockwell's life and actions serve as a stark reminder of the early days of the Mormon Church, where loyalty to the church leadership could be demanded at the cost of human life. His violent legacy is still discussed and debated in Mormon history today.
Wild Bill Hickman. Oh, he doesn't know when to quit.
He's not alone. Porter's with him.
You've heard the stories. Porter Rockwell can't be killed.
I prophesy in the name of the Lord, so long as you shall remain loyal and true to thy faith, need fear no enemy.
Porter!
Ervil LeBaron was the leader of a fundamentalist Mormon polygamous cult that became infamous for its brutal and chilling acts of violence in the 1970s and 1980s. Known for his extreme interpretations of Mormon doctrine, particularly the concept of blood atonement, LeBaron's reign of terror left a trail of murder and destruction, marking one of the darkest chapters in religious extremism within the Mormon community. LeBaron was born in 1925 in Utah, and he became involved in polygamous teachings at a young age. He was heavily influenced by his brother Joel LeBaron, who led a breakaway group of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Ervil eventually took control of the group after Joel's death in 1972, claiming to have received divine revelations that justified his leadership. Under Ervil's direction, the group's beliefs became increasingly radical, with Ervil claiming that he had been appointed by God to cleanse the earth through violent acts, including the practice of blood atonement. One of the most notorious aspects of Ervil LeBaron's leadership was his belief that members who left or opposed him, as well as those he considered apostates, needed to be executed as part of his purification mission. This led to the formation of a violent faction within the LeBaron group, which carried out a series of murders between the 1970s and 1980s. Ervil LeBaron is believed to have ordered at least 25 murders, including the killing of his brother Joel, who had been the original leader of the group. Other victims included former followers who had fallen out of favor or dared to question Ervil's authority. One of the most chilling aspects of LeBaron's cult was his ability to manipulate and control his followers, convincing them that these murders were divinely sanctioned. LeBaron's violent reign ended in 1977 when he was arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder. He was convicted and sentenced to life in prison for his role in the deaths of several people. Ervil LeBaron died in 1981 while still serving his sentence. The story of Ervil LeBaron is a horrifying reminder of how radical religious ideology, when combined with abuse of power, can lead to unspeakable acts of violence. His legacy remains a dark one, showing how the manipulation of religious beliefs can push individuals to commit heinous acts in the name of a twisted version of faith.
Well, there are a lot of religious fanatics out there. Most of them are harmless.
Believe me, Mr. Fields, this one's not harmless.
seen, and so shall it pass. My brother Verlin will go to the funeral. My brother will die at the funeral.
We believe he crossed the border last night to take charge of preparing his followers for armed rebellion here in the States.
It's hard to overthrow the country with 50 followers, don't you think?
Look, why don't we just storm the place? We'll mow down whoever gets in the way. We'll use the machine gun.
We wouldn't even make it to the front door. It'd be suicide.
Look, we came here to do a job, so let's get it on. Today's a good day to die for the Lord.
Whatever happens in this world, you have nothing to fear, ever. You will enter the kingdom. You have been chosen, Rena.
This isn't really about religion or ideology. It's about a bloodlust. It's about an armed cult leader, a madman seeking power. And he is coming. Believe me, Mr. Fields. He is coming.
Thou shalt surely kill him. Shall be first upon him to put him to death. Thus saith the Lord, and thus saith the servant of the Lord.
Ted Bundy is one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. His brutal crimes span decades and left a chilling legacy of terror. Although Bundy's connection to the Mormon faith is somewhat debated, he was raised in an LDS household, and he had connections to the Mormon faith when he moved to Utah in order to pursue his law degree. His upbringing has often been cited as a key factor in his complex psychological profile that would later contribute to his violent actions. Born in 1946 in Vermont, Bundy grew up in a family that was involved in the LDS Church, though he did not remain a devout follower as he entered adulthood. His relationship with the religion was complicated, and some accounts suggest that his religious background may have left a lasting effect on his psyche. However, what ultimately defined Bundy was not his religious affiliation, but the horrific crimes he committed. Bundy was responsible for the deaths of at least 30 young women across multiple states in the 1970s, though the true number of victims is believed to have been much higher. His modus operandi was both terrifying and methodical. He often lured his victims by pretending to be injured or asking for help before attacking them. He would then kidnap, essay, and murder them, often taking their bodies to secluded locations, where he would engage in further mutilation and acts of brutality. Bundy's charm and ability to deceive people were key factors in his ability to evade capture for so long. He was often described as charismatic, intelligent, and well-spoken, traits that allowed him to gain the trust of his victims and the authorities. Bundy was eventually apprehended in 1975 after a series of arrests, and his subsequent trial became a media sensation. In 1979, Bundy was convicted of several murders and sentenced to death. During his time on death row, he confessed to the murders of 30 women, although the true number remains unknown. Bundy's final moments were spent in the Florida State Prison, where he was executed by electric chair in 1989. Ted Bundy's story is one of a man who appeared ordinary on the surface, but harbored a dark, violent side beneath. His chilling crimes and manipulative personality have made him a central figure in discussions of criminal psychology and have left an indelible mark on the public consciousness. While his Mormon background may have played a role in shaping his early life, it was his capacity for violence, deception, and manipulation that ultimately defined him as one of history's most notorious serial killers.
He didn't look like anybody's notion of somebody who would tear apart young girls.
My name is Ted Bundy.
I've never spoken to anybody about this. I am looking for an opportunity to tell the story as best I can.
A person of this type chooses his victim for a reason. Possession, control, violence.
There was something unique about Ted's brain. He talked in terms of a voice in his head, and this voice would start saying things about women.
He had very blue eyes. When he really got going, his eyes went absolutely black.
Murder, leaving a person of this type hungry, unfulfilled, would also leave him with the obviously irrational belief that the next time he did it, he would be fulfilled. And the next time he did it, he would be fulfilled. Or the next time he did it, he would be fulfilled.
Theodore Bundy has escaped, suspected of dozens of sex killings in Washington State, Idaho, Utah, and Colorado.
I think things are going to work out. That's about all I can say.
Bundy is acting as his own lawyer.
What is unusual to see is that many of the onlookers are women. Are you a little scared when you look at him?
He just doesn't look like the type to kill somebody.
Serial killer Theodore Bundy has escaped once again. One of the FBI's most wanted men.
He was charming, good-looking, smart. Are you sure you have the right guy?
I mean, I'm not an animal and I'm not crazy. I'm a split personality. I mean, I'm just a normal individual.
John D. Lee is one of the most infamous figures in the history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, largely due to his role in the Mountain Meadows Massacre, a horrific event that took place in 1857. Lee's involvement in this brutal attack, which resulted in the slaughter of 120 migrants, marks him as the worst Mormon psychopath in history. Born in 1812 in Illinois, Lee converted to Mormonism in 1835 and quickly became a dedicated and loyal member of the church. He eventually rose through the ranks of the LDS community, gaining prominence as a member of the church's leadership and settling in the Mormon colony in Utah. Known for his leadership skills, Lee was a trusted figure in Brigham Young's inner circle. However, Lee's legacy would forever become tainted by his involvement in one of the most tragic events in American history. In 1857, a group of immigrants traveling westward through southern Utah, known as the Baker-Thatcher Party, became embroiled in a violent conflict with Mormon settlers. Tensions between the Mormons and non-Mormons were high, and Lee, along with other Mormon militia members, took part in a plot that ultimately led to a massacre. Under orders from higher Mormon leaders, Lee and his men ambushed the group, killing men, women, and children in a calculated and brutal attack that lasted for days. The massacre was initially blamed on Native American tribes, but investigations later revealed the truth. The Mormon militia led by Lee had carried out the massacre. Lee's role as one of the primary leaders behind the massacre and his later effort to cover up the truth sealed his fate. In 1877, Lee was arrested and charged with murder. His trial revealed the depths of the conspiracy behind the massacre, and Lee was ultimately convicted for his role in the deaths of over 120 innocent people. He was sentenced to death by firing squad, and in March 1877, John D. Lee was executed for his crimes. John D. Lee's involvement in the Mountain Meadows Massacre left a dark stain on the early history of the LDS Church. His actions, driven by religious zealotry and a blind loyalty to church leaders, resulted in one of the deadliest and most tragic massacres in American history. Lee remains a controversial figure, representing the dangers of religious extremism and the catastrophic consequences of unchecked power.
I'm John D. Lee, Indian Commissioner for this district. We have got the Indians under control. Yeah! Come with us, and you'll be safe.
Thank God. They've been at us for days. I don't think we could have lasted much longer.
Most of the Indians trust us. We have an agreement worked out with them. But we must move quickly before the dissenters convince the others to attack again. Don't worry. We've dealt with them before.
What should we do?
We must take all the weapons, all your guns, and put them in one of the wagons.
Why should we give up our guns?
We have to give the appearance of peace. No weapons.
I don't like us giving up our guns. We'd be defenseless.
Sir, we know these savages. They know that we are a militia. We have to convince them that you are in our custody.
Giving up our weapons doesn't make much sense.
Nothing we have to do in order to appease the Indians makes much sense, sir. Trust me. Don't worry. We will transport you to Cedar City in safety. Once there, you will be cared for until the opportunity comes for you to be taken to California.
I don't know about the others, but I got a bad feeling about this.
Put all children 8 years old and younger into the other wagon.
I'm not giving you my child. Neither am I.
Do you want to save your babies? Then put them into that wagon. There'll be armed guards all around. Your babies will be protected better than your gold.
Do your duty!
Have mercy.
I do this out of duty.
God forgive you.
Oh Lord my God, receive their spirits.
We were not to spill the blood of the innocent.
I shot her before I realized she had a baby.
Micah! Micah! Enough!
And there you have it, folks, the top 10 most psychopathic Mormons in history. From cold-blooded murders driven by religious extremism to shocking betrayals of trust and morality, the individuals that we've covered today stand as stark reminders of the dangers of when faith goes unchecked. Now, of course, it's important to remind you that not all Latter-day Saints are represented by the people that we've discussed today. These cases represent a dark corner in religious extremism, where the power of faith is used to manipulate and justify the most heinous acts. But they also show us the importance of accountability and the need to question dangerous ideologies that can lead to destruction. While these stories are indeed highly disturbing, they serve as an important part of our history, helping us understand the complex intersections between faith, power, and human nature. Thank you so much for joining us on this eye-opening episode. If you found this episode as chilling as I did, be sure to like and subscribe and share this video with someone else who might appreciate it. As always, we welcome your thoughts in the comment section below. And of course, let me know if you think I got something wrong on this list, or if it was in the wrong order. Always think celestial, and remember, no unhallowed hand can stop the Mormon News Roundup from progressing.